Good morning to you all. This is Mr. Rao. I come up with a interesting part in the human health and diseases. And some of the common human diseases are caused by nematode parasites, which in generally used to call as a roundworms. As a part of that, in the previous class, I explained in detail about filariasis or the elephantiasis. In today's session, I'd like to explain one more disease that is caused by these nematodes or nematohelminthes. As you all know that these are in general used to known as the roundworms. The very interesting here, the disease that is caused by this nematode parasite is Ascariasis. The Ascariasis is actually the name of the disease. This one. And there is a causative organism for this Ascariasis in the humankind. The name of this disease causing pathogen is Ascaris lumbricoides. Ascaris lumbricoides is actually the scientific name of nematode parasite that causes the Ascariasis in us. And coming to this one, it's a systematic position, how it is classified in the entire animal kingdom. When you see this Ascarias lumbricoides, the phylum name of this one is actually nematode or nematohelminthes. Whereas the class of this one is the Phasmidia, is its a class. And here its a genus name is Ascarias, and whereas the species name is lumbricoides. There is an interesting here fact behind giving the scientific name of this Ascaris lumbricoides. Particularly here, the species name of this parasite, it was assigned a name lumbricoides. There is an interesting here, the cause for assigning this species name to it. When you see earthworm, actually its name is lumbricus. And the body structure of the earthworm lumbricus is almost all resemblance to the body structure of this nematode parasite. That is the reason why the species name lumbricoides is assigned to that. That is an important and interesting part. Here, the body of Ascaris is resembling to the body of the earthworm. And name of the earthworm is lumbricus. Hence, the species name lumbricoides is assigned to this parasite. That is the basic reason for giving the species name to this. Right. Let us see here some general characteristic features of this nematode parasite, that is Ascaris lumbricoides. When you see this Ascaris lumbricoides, right, and it is actually generally known as common roundworm. And thing is here, it is actually the intestinal parasite or the enteric parasite. That means this is a parasite in the human body actually present in your small intestine. Hence we call it as intestinal or enteric parasite. Right? And next to this, when you see, this parasite is monogenetic parasite, dimorphic parasite, as well as pseudocoelomate. Then what does that mean? Then the monogenetic, it indicates this is a parasite which completes its life cycle only in a single host. The human beings obviously the host for this parasite. That is the reason why this is known as a monogenetic parasite. Whereas this parasite is dimorphic parasite also. The reason here, the male and female are separate from one another. And they can here easily identify by studying the external morphological characteristic features, so that they do exhibit here sexual dimorphism. That is the reason why we do consider this parasite as a dimorphic parasite. Whereas coming to the pseudocoelomates, as you all know that here pseudocoelomates are the organisms which have got a coelom which is not a true and that is not formed by mesodermal layer of its embryonic stage. Such a kind of organisms are altogether known as pseudocoelomates. And whereas this is a cosmopolitan in its distribution. Cosmopolitan in the distribution in the sense this parasite is not restricted to any particular geographical area. This is spread all over the world, and this disease occurs all the people in the world and across the world. That is the reason why we call it as cosmopolitan in its distribution. Cosmopolitan in the distribution means The parasite, it is here distributed all over the world. Then it is known as cosmopolitan in its distribution. Whereas the next one is the infective stage of this parasite. As you all know that here, every parasite in its life cycle, at a particular stage, it infects the human being. And that is actually known as its infective stage. In the same way, there we study about the infective stage of malaria, the infective stage of amoebiasis, infective stage of filariasis. In the same way, even the Ascariasis also has got a particular infective stage at which it enters into the human body. And that stage is actually embryonated egg. And this embryonated egg particularly has got a second stage rhabditiform larva. It's another important bit. It is having the second stage rhabditiform larva which is present in embryonated egg, and this is actually the infective stage to the human being. Clear? Right. And next to this, when you see, let us see the structure of this one in a detailed way. The male and female worms and how they are all visible to us. What is its body structure? Let us see now clearly. When you see this one, actually the structure, this male sex are different, separate, and they do exhibit the sexual dimorphism is one thing. It's an important part. Separate, so they do exhibit the sexual dimorphism, which is very clear. So this indicates that male worm is different from female worm morphologically, even internally also, right? We will see now the male worm. If you see the male worm and female worm, here they do have got elongated cylindrical body. This is the first and foremost important thing. A cylindrical elongated body is present. The first point. And coming to this one is actually a male worm. When you see the anterior end as well as the posterior end, both of them are pointed, is one more thing. It is elongated and cylindrical body structure has got, whereas the anterior end as well as the posterior end, both of them are pointed. At its anterior end, you can happen to see the mouth. The mouth is present. This is the mouth. But interesting point is the mouth is covered by 3 chitinous lips. This is an important point. The mouth is covered by 3 chitinous lips. If you feel it is a mouth which is get covered by 3 chitinous lips like this. Whereas when we study about filarial worm, at its anterior end it has got a mouth, but the mouth is not covered by the lips. But whereas in case of Ascariasis lumbricoides, the mouth is covered by 3 chitinous lips. See this here clearly. Chitinous lips are present, which are 3, which covers the mouth of this organism. Right? And thereafter, very close to the mouth, mid-ventrally, you can happen to see one hole or opening, which we call it as excretory pore. This excretory pore involves in the process of excretion. This is what? Excretory pore, right? This is all about the general characteristic features. Now let us come to the characteristic features of male and female. How the male is different from the female and what are the here characteristic features that helps to us for identification of male worm from the female worm. And the first and foremost important thing, in case of male, the posterior end is curved. It is a very important characteristic features. This is posterior end is curved, which we call it as tail. Whereas in case of a female worm, the posterior end is straight, right? That is one thing. And next to this, at its posterior end, you can happen to see a opening is present. This opening is known as cloacal aperture. Cloacal aperture. And this is the area at which you can find out two which are equal sized chitinous spicules are present, which are technically known as pineal spicules or the pineal setae. This is an important part. See this one. These are known as pineal spicule or pineal setae. Then what is the role of these pineal spicules? These pineal spicules actually here helps in transmission of the sperms during the copulation time. Right? This is a male, no? Male naturally produces the sperms, and these sperms are get released into the female body with the help of these pineal spicules or pineal setae, or we do consider it as even the copulatory spicules also. Since they are involving in the mechanism of copulation, we do consider it as here copulatory spicules too. So that is actually mentioned here. So which are equal in the size, chitinous pineal spicules are there. These are otherwise known as pineal setae. Clear? Right. And next one is the posterior end has got an opening. As I said, we call it as cloacal aperture. This part is the cloacal aperture. So I will rough so it will be clear. Right? This particular opening is called cloacal aperture. So the cloacal aperture is a region where you can find out two equal sized chitinous pineal spicules or pineal setae are present. This is all about the male worm. Coming to the female worm, when you see, the female worm has got long cylindrical body and both the pointed here ends are present. That means anterior end and the posterior end, both of them are pointed. At its anterior end you can happen to see the mouth, and very close to the mouth there you can happen to see an opening, and this opening is known as excretory pore. But which one interesting point, from the at about 1/3 length from the mouth, it has gotten another opening mid-ventrally. Mid-ventrally at about 1/3 length from the mouth, it has got another opening, and this opening is known as vulva. It is known as vulva, or else it is in general we used to call it as female genital pore or aperture. It is female genital pore or vulva, it is known as. What is its location? It is actually present mid-ventrally at about 1/3 length from the mouth of this parasite, right? And when you see, the posterior end is not curved, it is straight, right? This is about the female worm, that you can see here clearly. The posterior end is straight, one thing. There we call it as a tail naturally, and you can see the anus is present at its posterior end. There you can see an opening at its posterior end, we call it as the anus. And next to this you can see the female genital pore or vulva is present at its here mid-ventral side at about 1/3 length from its mouth. That is what it actually mentioned. This vulva is present at about 1/3 length from the mouth. This is about the female worm. So here these characters that helps to us to distinguish the male from the female. So what are the characters naturally helps to us for distinguish the male worm from a female one? I'd like to here list out the differences between the two. One is the male worm has got the posterior curved tail, whereas the female worm has got a straight tail, posterior end. Right, when you see here at the posterior end, the male worm has got this cloacal aperture, but at its posterior end it has got the anus. Whereas at the cloacal aperture region of a male worm, we can happen to see two equal sized chitinous pineal spicules or pineal setae or pineal or copulatory spicules are present, which naturally involve in transmission of the sperms during the copulation time. Whereas here on the female body, at the mid-ventral side, actually it has got the female genital pore through which actually the eggs are released after the copulation, and this is actually the pore through which it receives even the sperms from the male worm also. So these are the major differences between the male and female worms. That is the reason why in the beginning itself I stressed on a point that this is actually exhibiting the sexual dimorphism. Okay, this is about this one. Later on, let us see here what is the mode of infection. How does this causes infection in the human being in a detailed way? Before I get into that mode of infection, I'd like to give you the real picture of this Ascariasis lumbricoides. This is actually the picture that you can see clearly, all the points also here. See this. This is the male worm, has got a mouth, and the female worm also has got a mouth. Very close to the mouth, there you can see the excretory pore. There the female, we can happen to see the female genital pore or vulva, and whereas here at the extreme and posterior end we can see the anus. There you can see the straight tail in the female. In case of male, there you can see the curved tail posterior end, whereas the cloacal aperture is present. There you can see here pineal spicules at the cloacal region. This is about the structure of or the picture of the Ascariasis lumbricoides. Now we will see the mode of infection. How does this infection it causes? Generally, after copulation, the female it releases the embryonated eggs. These embryonated eggs actually comes out of an infected person along with the fecal matter. It is an important thing. Along with the fecal matter, the embryonated eggs of the parasite, they do comes out here and they do reach to the soil. Right. And at that time, all these eggs are get mixed with a soil, and even that can be here mixed with the water and the plants. So contamination of soil, water and plants will be taken place, and it finally leads to contamination of certain kind of substances like fruits, vegetables as well as the water. So water will be get contaminated, vegetables as well as the fruits. Then when the person consumes such a kind of contaminated water, vegetables, fruits, then this embryonated egg is get entered into our intestine and causes the infections in the new host. This is the way how the infection it occurs. Now I do explain the complete the life cycle of this parasite, so you will get more idea about here how this is get transmitted and how it develops the pathogenicity in our body, what symptoms will be developed in all the way we will study now. The life cycle of the parasite. The first one, these adult worms are present in our small intestine. So the adult worm, it includes both male and female worms are present in our actually the small intestine, and since they do take part the copulation, which is a part of the sexual intercourse or sexual type of reproduction, actually the female worm it releases the mammal-lated eggs. Here released mammal-lated eggs. Then important point related to this, almost all 2 lakh eggs will be released by here female Ascariasis lumbricoides in each day. Every day it can release 2 lakhs number of these eggs. When you see its structure, it is another important here part. The embryonated egg is present like this, and at its center it has got a nucleus. This part is actually nucleus, and within which you can happen to see the cytoplasm is present. This is what the cytoplasm. Very interesting point related to this. It is get covered by the three important layers. There you can see outermost layer, which is here repelled structure is present around that, and this outermost layer is actually a protein coat is one thing. Just beneath to this you can happen to see the one more layer is present, and this layer is actually made up of chitinous material. So there is a layer, another layer is present here, chitinous membrane or layer. And just here below this you can happen to see the one more layer is also present, and this layer is actually made up of fats or the lipids, this one. So this is a lipid membrane. Lipid membrane. All these three together forms the shell. The shell around this egg will be formed, and when you see its outer surface is actually made up of a protein, and it is repellent in its actually the surface shape. That is the reason why this egg is known as mammallated egg. That means this egg, it resembles to the eggs of a mammals. In the mammals, actually outermost coat is actually made up of these proteins. That is the reason why the name is given to this. This is actually here mammallated eggs. These mammallated eggs or embryonated eggs or comes out of an infected person body along with his fecal matter when he go for the defecation. Now it is released into the actually the soil. Now what happens? Within the soil, the embryo present in the egg is start developing. So resulting of that, in a moisture soil, here the egg it develop into here first stage rhabditiform larva. This is what? The first stage rhabditiform larva. It's an important change that takes place within this first stage rhabditiform larva whenever it is present in the soil. So that change is nothing but the first molting. It is an important thing. The first molting, it takes place within that. Resulting of the first molting that takes place in the first stage rhabditiform larva, then it turns into the second stage rhabditiform larva, right? That you can see here. It is a second stage rhabditiform larva. Within that, how it develops? This one is get changes in such a way. This is called the second stage rhabditiform larva that you can see here. Right, I said very clearly the embryonated egg or mammallated egg with the second stage rhabditiform larva is infective stage to a man. What does that mean? This is the stage at which it enter into the human body. These second stage rhabditiform larvae actually present in the soil, and if at all the water is get contaminated because of that, or the fruits or vegetables and the food that you are taking, if it is get contaminated by this rhabditiform larva, without disinfecting that water as well as the food material, if you consume, then this second stage rhabditiform larva it enter in your body, right? So that it causes the infections in us. And next, what happens in that, you will see now. This finally reaches to your small intestine. Within the small intestine, this sheeted here, the shell present around that is get dissolved in your small intestine. The reason, your small intestine produces various types of digestive enzymes. These enzymes here can digest the proteins, carbohydrates as well as the lipids. So that here the external shell, the layers which are made up of proteins, chitin as well as lipids will be get dissolved. Resulting of that, this larva is released into your small intestine. Now this larva, that is the rhabditiform larva that releases into your intestine because of dissolving the shell by the intestinal here a juice, or else we call it as succus entericus. And next, what happens is this: from your intestine, this larva actually reaches to your liver. It is an important point. through a blood vessel which we call it as hepatic portal vein. So this is a blood vessel which carries the blood from your intestine to your liver. So digested food material that are all absorbed in your alimentary canal that may get brings to the liver by this blood vessel which we call it as hepatic portal vein. So through this blood vessel, this egg-sheeted second stage larva, it reaches to your liver. Thereafter, from the liver, this parasite migrates to your heart through the post-caval vein is one more important blood vessel. So from the liver, it gets transferred to your heart. The blood vessel which carries this parasite from liver to the heart is known as post-caval vein. Important bits all these are. The post-caval vein. Thereafter from the heart, this parasite is transported to your lungs. That is an important part. And this is transported to the lungs. And here there is a pulmonary artery which carries the blood from the heart to the lungs. So this involves in transmission of the parasite or larva stage from heart to the lungs. So we call it as pulmonary artery. Within your lungs, actually there are structural and functional units which we call them as alveolus. So finally this parasite, it reaches to the alveolus of your lung. It is an important thing. Now within this alveolus, this larval stage undergoes to molting 2 times. Already the first molting taken place in the soil. Then the second molting, it takes place in the alveolus. Resulting of the second molting, the second stage rhabditiform larva turns into third stage larva. This is one thing. Again, within the alveolus itself, one more molting will be taken place. In its number, it is a third molting. The third molting will be taken place. Here it is. It's a third molting will take place within that. Resulting of that third molting, the third stage larva turns into naturally the fourth stage larva. It turns into the fourth stage larva. Now this larva from your alveolus again start migrating. Then here you can see from the alveolus it start enter into your bronchi is one thing. From the bronchi it reaches to your trachea. From the trachea it reaches to your larynx, which is a voice box. From the larynx it reaches to your glottis. From the glottis it reaches to the pharynx, because the pharynx is the junction of respiratory as well as the digestive tract. Why it make this extra intestinal journey? See, this parasite must reach your intestine. In the beginning itself, in the general characteristic features, when I said here these characteristic features, it indicates that this is a parasite which is an enteric parasite or intestinal parasite. So this larva final destination is your intestine. So from the respiratory tract it must enter into your digestive system, so that it has to reach the junction of the respiratory as well as digestive system, nothing but the pharynx. So from the glottis then it reaches to your pharynx. From the pharynx part actually it must go to your esophagus, which is a food pipe. From the food pipe it reaches to your stomach. Finally from the stomach it reaches to your small intestine. Now it has reached its a final destination, that is a small intestine. What is that reach to this small intestine? Small intestine actually here the fourth stage larva is reached to the small intestine. Now within the small intestine, one more important bit, the fourth molting it takes place. The fourth molting it takes place in the small intestine. It results in the formation of young ones. Young one will be produced. Then the young one within that actually matures into an adult form. So this is how the entire life cycle of this parasite is taken place within the human body as well as within the soil. But one more interesting thing, if you happen to see this one, once this is enter into your intestine, it is here making its journey apart from your small intestine. This part is actually known as extra-intestinal here migration. Extra-intestinal migration. From where it started, see this one, when it reaches to your small intestine, from the small intestine, it started here, enter into the liver. From the liver, it passes through your heart, passes through your lungs, alveolus, thereafter here bronchi, trachea, larynx, glottis, that followed by the pharynx, esophagus, again up to here, and the stomach. Up to this, actually, this is a journey of the parasite which is here carrying out apart from the small intestine. So the entire journey is known as, important bit, extra-intestinal migration. Right? And this is all about its life cycle. I do explain this one. I do give you the picture of the entire life cycle, so it will be more clear to you. So here it is the picture of the embryonated egg that you can see clearly, and it is labeled different parts that are all present within that. So just now I explained that embryonated egg, it has got outer surface known as a protein coat, and that followed by the inner layer chitinous shell is present, and that followed by the lipid layer is present. At its center it has got a nucleus, and here the entire internal portion is here occupied by the cytoplasm. When you see its surface, the surface is repelled surface. Okay, so this is all about here this embryonated egg. Now there is an interesting point related to this one. When the conditions are favorable, when this embryonated egg is released into the moisture soil, this embryonated egg can here in a living condition viable up to 6 years. It is a very interesting point related to this one. This embryonated egg remains viable in the active condition, the living condition, when the conditions are favorable. Here up to 6 years it can be here in a living or active condition in the moisture soil when the conditions are favorable to that. Do you guess the reason for this? Important thing is it has got very here thick coat which is get lined by the 3 layers, and they're all made up of 3 different type of materials also. And internally it has got a lipid also, fat can be used as a food material. Clear? This is all about here the embryonated egg. Now we will see the same life cycle diagrammatically also. Will be clear to you more. This is what the life cycle of this parasite. Here there you can see the male worm and the female worm, and they are present in your intestine. Actually they are present in the intestine, and after copulation they do release the egg which we call it as mammallated egg. And this mammallated egg is here comes out of the infected human body along with his fecal matter and released into the soil. When it is present in the soil, the egg start developing and it forms the first stage rhabditiform larva, in which actually the first molting will be taken place. Resulting of this first molting, it develop into the second stage rhabditiform larva. So at this condition, the food is get contaminated with these eggs. When that food is consumed, actually the second stage larva, rhabditiform larva, which is an infective stage, is releases into your stomach, and that finally reaches to your small intestine. Within the small intestine, by the action of various types of digestive enzymes, that external shell is get dissolved, and this second stage rhabditiform larva is released into your small intestine. Small intestine. Thereafter, it start the extra-intestinal migration. From small intestine, it reaches to your liver. From the liver, it reaches to your heart. From the heart to the lungs. From the lungs, actually, it start again migrating. Here within this alveoli, it undergoes to the second molting as well as the third molting. It results in formation of here third stage larva as well as the fourth stage larva. Now the fourth stage larva is start migrating from your alveolus to the bronchi, bronchi to the trachea, trachea to the larynx, larynx to the glottis, glottis to the pharynx, pharynx to the esophagus, then finally reaches to your stomach. From the stomach, it reaches to the small intestine, where the fourth molting it takes place, and thereafter here the young ones will be get developed. These young ones later on attain the sexual maturity stage and here develop as an adult worms. This is actually here the life cycle of this parasite in a detailed way. Now let us see here what will be the symptoms of this disease. The very important thing, these are all the parasite I said it present in your intestine. So the blockage of intestine will be taken place because of here accumulation of more number of these worms in your small intestine. So intestinal blockages is one important thing. Resulting of this blockage, there you can find out the discomfort in your abdomen. Abdominal discomfort in the severe condition when the worms are more, you do experience the severe abdominal pain also. Right? Point clear? So that is the one thing. Thereafter, you can see here, because of presence of all these in your intestine, even the digestion process also not carries out perfectly. So that indigestion it takes place. That is one thing. This followed by vomitings in an infected person, and that followed by the diarrhea in the infected person. So another symptom. Right. As they are all present in your small intestine, the food that you are consuming is consumed by this parasite, so that the nutrients will not be supplied to your body organs. That is the reason why the children particularly, even the adults also some cases will undergo to malnutrition also. So if one or two or more than the nutrients are deficient in our diet, if at all the nutrients are available, but if they are not available to our body in a required quantity, then that condition is known as malnutrition, that we study already in the digestion topic. So because of consumption of all the food material by these worms present in your intestine, your body will not get sufficient amount of the nutrients in a required quantity, so that it leads to here malnutrition deficiency also. Deficiency of nutrients technically known as malnutrition. And thereafter, in some of the cases, in children particularly, it leads to even the stunted growth also. The reason for that, these substances actually present in our this organism present in our body and releases a kind of substances, and these substances doesn't allow the growth hormone in our body, so that it leads to even the stunted growth in children. It's another important point related to this. All these are the symptoms of the disease, right? And thereafter, what will be the prevention for this and what will be the treatment for this? Let us see now here in a detailed way. And coming to the prevention of this disease, you know that the prevention is known as prophylaxis. It's almost all equal to the prevention of amoebiasis. There we studied how the amoebiasis it occurs and how can we actually prevent that amoebiasis. Here also the same thing. First thing is using the boiled and filtered water is one important thing, because this diseases get transmitted by contaminated water is one thing. Thereafter, since these eggs are releasing out along with the infected person's the fecal matter, the person must be used here the toilets, right? That is a one important thing. Septic tank toilets must be used. That is one thing, so that they do not get chance to get mixed up with your soil and mixed up with your water and other eatable items. Is the second important thing. And the third point here it is washing your hands thoroughly, and the fruits and vegetables that you are using also must be washed thoroughly, so that they can be made disinfectant, clear, free from this kind of eggs or infective stages. So by following the three important things, naturally you can prevent the disease. Whereas what will be the treatment for this disease? Unfortunately, if you fall sick, then how do you prevent this disease? And here that comes under the treatment. In this treatment, actually we do use different kind of anti-worm drugs or anti-helminthic drugs. Anti means that is a drug which here act against to this helminthic parasite. This is actually a roundworm helminthic parasite. Such a kind of drugs when we use, naturally we can kill this parasite. Then what are these kind of disease? Here the drugs, let us see now here. See this one, the oil of chinopodium is one important thing. Actually, podium is the name of a plant. From this we can extract a certain kind of oil. By using this oil, we can kill this parasite some extent, right? Next one is here, alcopoar bendex is another drug. alcoperbendex is a drug. By using it, you can kill even this parasite also. And next to this here, dewormis. So this is a drug which kills the worms. So we call it as dewormis. Such a kind of drug also helps to us in order to kill this parasite naturally. And thereafter, at last, we can see Gentol. Such a kind of drug is also helps to us in order to kill these parasites. These are all here, the drugs can be used in order to kill the parasite so that you will be free from the infection. So this is all about a nematode parasite and the disease caused by that, and the entire story of the Ascaris lumbricoides, the entire worm, and even the disease also, that is Ascariasis, that is caused by this Ascaris lumbricoides. I hope you all get the detailed information regarding this nematode parasite and the disease caused by this nematode parasite. Right? With this, we do concluded the diseases caused by the nematodes. In the next class, I will explain about the fungal diseases so that we can conclude this topic, that is common human diseases. Till that time, enjoy this concept. Thank you all.